All right, Spark family, here we are. You just finished watching our so-and-so show for the Spark 456 preteen video. If you did not do that, before you watch the rest of this video, I want you to go back. I want you to watch the complete 456 experience so that you know exactly what we're doing right now. This video is to help you along with the parent conversation guide. So what we decided to do this week, after a fantastic parent meeting that I had last Sunday, there was a few parents that said, hey, why don't you shoot a video that goes along with the parent conversation guide where you kind of walk us through some of the activities and then prompt us with some of the questions. So that is exactly what I'm going to do this time. So thank you, Stephanie Hinsey, for suggesting that. And it gives me the opportunity to kind of get in front of you guys and your kids too, who, by the way, I am missing something fierce and something terrible. The great thing is Pastor BJ is doing the same thing with Spark 123. So your kids will have, if you have that age group, over on the elementary page, they're doing the exact same thing right now. So as you have watched the Bible story, you saw that they covered quite a bit of ground. Just as we did today in the adult worship service, you saw that we took communion together. So I hope that you guys did that as a family, along with Pastor Steve's guidance. We did that together. So we just finished, Jesus just finished the Last Supper. He started his way to the Garden of Gethsemane with his disciples. He left 3 of his disciples right there and said, please pray, and did just that. And then he went off to pray and said, please just pray with me. I'm going to be going off for about an hour to pray. It wasn't just your normal prayer that Jesus did in the garden. It was intense. He was praying to the Father and saying, I know what I'm going to have to do here, and it's going to be painful, and it's going to be tough. I'm going to have to endure a lot of things, but it's worth it, because he was teaching us about humility, putting others first by giving up what you think you deserve. Now, Jesus knew from the very beginning exactly what he had to do to redeem all of mankind back to the Father. And that's exactly what he was prepared to do, but he was looking to his Father and saying, listen, if there is any other way for this to happen, then please take this cup of pain, take this cup of suffering from me. But if this is the only way, then it's not my will, but it's your will be done. After he had prayed that prayer, he went back and checked on his disciples. They were asleep. We know the story. At that time, he looked at his disciples and said, you couldn't pray just 1 hour with me? You couldn't give up what you wanted for me? He was testing their humility. They failed miserably. And as we see along, as the Bible story went, as he heard the soldiers marching up, as it was led by Judas, who had given up, who had sold the Savior for 30 pieces of silver, and who was leading the soldiers and the Pharisees up the road. And all of a sudden, Jesus sees him and says, do what you've got to do, Judas. Judas betrays him with a kiss. The Pharisees and the soldiers come up to Jesus and begin to arrest him. Peter steps forward, grabs his sword, slices the ear off of the chief priest's servant. And Jesus could have at that point let it all take place, but instead he reaches down and he says, he who uses the sword will die by the sword. But he reaches down and he heals the servant at that point. Humility expressed in so many ways in this story. Jesus is then led off to be tried, and then to be tried and eventually crucified, as we will continue on the story next week. You know, that story, yes, it might be extremely familiar, but from the aspect of humility, putting others first, it's one of the greatest stories of all time for sure. And it teaches us a very important lesson. Now, in our activity today, you're going to want to get several different things, all right? You can either use Post-it notes, so you're going to gather these things together. Post-it notes, you could use index cards, or just scrap pieces of paper that you got lying around. I know with homeschool stuff going on right now, there's probably plenty of scrap pieces of paper, all right? So you can use any of these 3 things, because what you're going to do with them is you're going to get an ink pen or a Sharpie or a marker or something like that, and you are going to write down some things as a family with your 4th, 5th, or 6th grader. You're going to write down some things of some ways that you can put others first. And then once you do that, those 10 things, you are going to start to categorize them by things that are easy to do some that are more challenging to do. Now, let me give you a few examples, like some ways that you can put others first by letting someone else, maybe your brother or sister, choose the movie that you're watching one night instead of you making the choice. Maybe it's holding the door open for somebody else and letting them go in first. Maybe it's doing a chore that's not your responsibility. Maybe it's taking out the trash or getting the mail for an elderly neighbor so they don't have to come outside during this time, of crisis, so they can stay inside. Maybe it's something like that. I don't want to give you a whole bunch of ideas. I want you guys to discuss it together. Now, when you've got your 10 together, I want you to divide them out. If you're using Post-it notes, you can put them up on the wall, but I want you to make 5 of them that are easy on one side and 5 of them that are more difficult, and I want you to discuss and talk about it and say why some are more challenging and why some are easier than others. You can pause this video, do that activity, and then we'll start on with our questions. So go ahead, you can pause the video right now. But we're going to keep moving on though, because I've got some questions. So as we talk about our Bible story, let me ask you 2 questions here to finish this thing up. Those 2 questions go like this. How do you think the disciples felt when they realized they weren't there for Jesus when he needed them the most? How do you think the disciples felt when all of a sudden they realized the one thing that he asked us to do, we failed to do it? How do you think that made them feel? Man, we can put ourselves in that own position, each and every day when we're put into this real world situations at school or at work or on the ball field or at a practice or something like that, that even some of the simplest things that we can do by the words that we say or our attitudes or our behaviors, we're not there to represent Jesus the best way that we possibly can. Discuss that here in just a minute at the end of this video. And maybe one last thing. Maybe talk about how you have put someone else first this past week. Talk about a moment that you consciously thought, you know what? I'm the least important person in this situation. I want to put somebody else first this past week. That's what you did. You thought about it. Remember our life app, humility, right? Putting others first by giving up what you think you deserve. Ooh, deserve is one of those words that I just don't like. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I want you to discuss too, maybe this month, the difference between the word deserve and the word earned. What's the difference between deserve and earned? Man, if you can define and get the definition between I feel like I deserve this and maybe this is what I've earned, that'll make a big difference in the way that you think about certain things. I want you to also think about our memory verse for the month, Philippians 2, verse 3. And this is found in the New International Revised Version. That's the version that we use in Spark all the time. It says, don't do anything only to get ahead. Don't do it because you are proud. Instead, be humble. Value others more than yourself. Make that a memory verse for your entire family this month. We've got some big things happening this coming week. Tons of stuff for Easter. Man, it is going to be a blowout weekend, even though we can't be together to celebrate Easter. It is going to be an Easter, I promise, that you will never, ever forget. Literally, it will be an Easter event for the youngest members of your family to the oldest members of your family that you can literally do together. We'll be talking about it for the first time ever. It'll be something that Pastor Lori's group, that my group, Pastor Danny's group, and even the Link community, you guys will want to do together, because the games, the activities, the stuff that we're talking about is going to be super, super fun and interactive. We love you guys. I would like to say a gigantic thank you from my audience. Jersey, Miss Christie is right here. Our dog Juno, she's there. And my cameraman, Briggs. Thank you so very much. Take care. Hey, thanks. Take care. We love you guys. Please hit us up if you have anything that you need. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.